This is 7 cups of the light red kidney beans that have been soaking overnight. Now we're going to cook them and then freeze dry them without making them into a recipe because a viewer asked, and I hadn't done that before. That might be a good way to deal with some beans, so we'll get them started. So I cook the beans very low and slow. And now I'm just going to take them out and put them on cookie sheets lined with the Silpats. And I don't have any idea if this is the best way or if I should be filling the 7x7 trays, little pans like I often do. But I'm thinking I can just let them cool on here and then pre-freeze them. And since there's no thick juices, no sugary juices, I'm thinking they won't stick together. So if you've ever done beans without putting them in a recipe, just dry beans that you have cooked, how did you do them? How did it work out? Because I'm thinking that this way should work. I just never done it this way. And so I have no real idea how it's going to work and how they're going to hold up for rehydrating. And of course, I'll do a test at the end of this video. So my plan is to just take them out of here, strain them out, and hopefully I didn't overcook them. I wanted to make sure they were well done though. And I don't want to pile them because I want them to cool quickly and to be fairly dry. So that's why I thought I'd take them out while they're hot. It'll evaporate more of the liquid off of it and leave them nice and dry, I hope, so that they don't have ice between them that will stick, or very little. It won't hurt if a few of them kind of stick a little bit. Do that with all of them and get them into the freezer after they cool quite a bit. So I want to let them cool, and then we'll see them when it's time to put them into the freeze dryer. I'll put them on the trays and into the freeze dryer. The 7 cups of beans made 4 cookie sheets full of the beans after they're cooked, slow and long. May have overcooked them, but this is what I've got. They're going in the freezer now for pre-freezing. I'm working on a couple of different batches at the same time right now. I'm using my sister's machine again for one batch, so we'll keep that one kind of separate this time. On this one, we're going to do beans, just dry beans that I soaked overnight in water and then simmered until they were nice and soft. Put them on cookie sheets. Probably just saw that. Now we're going to get this cooling and get them in there. So let's get this set up. I mentioned a few times before that when our machine is not running, the door is open and the fan to dry it out is left on for at least a couple of days to make sure that it's really truly dry inside, so we don't have any chance for molds or mildews in there. So we'll get this set and get it running. Mine's an older machine from mid-2017, so my firmware is the older firmware. I'm really happy with it, have no intention of upgrading even if I could. And mine can't be upgraded to the newest version. It doesn't have the hardware to support some of that. I run everything on custom. I've got it set for 120 degrees Fahrenheit for the shelf temperature. That's the way I run almost everything. Occasionally I go lower. For some candies I go higher. And then the cycle times, I have it set to 6 hours of freeze. Because I pre-freeze almost everything, usually that's more than enough. And then I have the final dry set to 11 hours currently on my machine. And that's before I do the dry check and then put it in for more time. So we'll start it with customize and then start custom. And I will close the drain valve. And we'll start it cooling. And it says down here right now, it's saying 58. The thermometers down here say about 62. So it is cool down here. So I'll give that at least probably a half hour to pre-cool. Make sure that it's as cold as the stuff in the freezer, so about 0 to 5 degrees. before we get them out of the freezer and get them into the freeze dryer. So we'll be back in just a few minutes. All right, next, the pans with the beans on it. So we'll pop those off there and get them on the trays. I should have bought a can of beans, because you can get all these beans in cans, like at the chef store, number 10 cans. They probably do a better, more consistent job of cooking them than I do. So I'll probably do that next, or very soon, so then I can compare them, because theirs is probably, like I said, it's probably done better. Well, this is kind of what I was hoping, but I'm going to try tipping them out onto here. If I work fast, they should stay nice and frozen. Now get that onto here. It's not particularly full. I definitely could have put more on a tray, but that's what's going to be on there. So this one's tray 4. I'll wait until I get them all and then we'll weigh them all at once. Now we can get these weighed and recorded. Oh, tray 1, 1472. And I'm going to put a thermometer kind of in there. There's no really great place for these because there's not enough material here. But I want to just kind of cover that probe part and be able to kind of see it. It's not critical, of course. Tray 2, 1442. So I'm just trying to make sure it's not touching the tray underneath and that it's covered with something from above. Give me the truest reading that I can for the food without actually having it inside a piece of food. Tray 3, 1459. And tray 4, 1455. Whoop. They're really all pretty close together in weight. Let's go get them in the freeze dryer. My machine's been running now for 51 minutes pre-cooling. It says that the tray temperature, which is, again, the thermometer for this one, or the thermistor, is on the second shelf up, way in the back. Says it's 10 degrees and dropping. And the side thermometer says negative 25, maybe? Negative 30? I guess negative 30. We'll get these in there. These are about 10 degrees still. Got a ring all the way around the seal, so we know that it's going to be sealed well. The thermometers in the food, or amongst the food, they're reading about 10 degrees, so they didn't warm up too much during the transfer. And the fact that the tray was already frozen helps too, because then you're not putting the frozen stuff onto a hot tray. And it says on the display that it has 5 more hours of that 6-hour freeze time. If I come down and check it in a couple hours and the thermometers in the food are cold enough, like below 30, lower than 30 below, 30 to 40 below, then I can just simply bypass the rest of that freeze time and let it go to the main dry cycle. And if they're too warm, these shouldn't be, but if it was some food that was warm to start with, I could add more time so that I make sure that it gets cold before it starts. We'll be back in about 2 days to check this out. So don't go away, it'll be just a second. I'm over at my machine again. So my machine has been running for about 4 hours and 50 minutes almost. And I'd put the food in there, it had about 50 minutes. So it's been in there and cooling for about 4 hours. The temperatures, I have the one thermometer along the side, and it shows a little bit colder than negative 40. The top one shows colder than negative 30, close to negative 40, and about negative 35 on that one. Yeehaw! Now, my machine freezes from the back toward the front. So the chamber itself, you can watch it get cold as the cooling coil things inside that are wrapped around the barrel. So it starts at the back and then works its way forward. And the temperature probe for the trays is on the bottom of that shelf, way in the back. So it reads cold sooner than the thermometers that I put in. So if I was relying on this temperature reading here to tell me when it's cold enough, it's going to give me a reading from way in the back of that shelf, not all of the food toward the front. However, I know that because of those temperatures that I can skip an hour of, I can go ahead and skip an hour of that time. It doesn't need the full 6 hours. So I'm going to go ahead and skip 1 hour of that. Oops, wrong button. I need to go the down button. Okay, now it'll start doing the freeze drying in about 8 minutes. So it'll have 5 hours of freeze time. That'll be plenty cold for it. The other part I wanted to mention is the door. It is cool, but there's only a teeny bit of condensation on this outside layer. There's some ice on the inside layer. I think you can see that. It's not wiping away because that's on the inside little disc that I put in there. So it keeps this outside from getting as cold. Now we're going to go visit my sister's. So we're over at my sister's, and it has been in the freezing for 4 hours and 23 minutes. It's showing -20 on the display. I haven't finished the disc for hers, and you can see just all this condensation on her door. It's really quite a lot. It drips down the front. She added some paper towels and a little cutting mat thing to keep her desktop from getting wet. The batch of the beans has been in my machine for about 21¼ hours now, and it's been in the final dry for a little over 3 hours already. So it's really gone fast. It was a light load with these beans, and the beans, because of the light load, it is a relatively small water batch. It's, like I said, it says about 7 hours 40 minutes left. Currently the tray temperatures say 3 of them are about 80-90 degrees, one of them's 40 degrees. That's probably the most accurate temperature one. The other ones are probably wrong. It's probably due to the thermometer placement, because the beans, as they unfroze, those lumps that I had, probably fell down. It is on track that it could be done in less than 8 hours, because even the lowest one at 40 degrees, it has plenty of time to get up to the 120 and still finish drying before that. So we may take them out and check them today, but that would put it really late. That would put it at like 10 o'clock tonight, and I don't know that I want to do it at 10 o'clock at night. So I might just record the time or do the first weight check and then do the final tomorrow. Anyway, it's going faster than I expected, but I really should have thought it through and realized it was going to be a little quicker because the batch is smaller. Now, let's see if we can see inside here, because the beans, all of the skins are kind of peeling off, kind of breaking apart. And that might be a function of I cooked them and I probably overcooked them. Let's see if we can see these. You can see how the skins are pretty broken apart. And I honestly think that could be because my bad cooking. I overcooked them. Yeah, so I don't know. Let's see if we can see that next, another tray up higher. Here's another tray. We'll check back on those later. I was just over at my sister's checking her machine because I thought it was going to finish before mine. None of the thermometers on hers have made it to 100 degrees yet. There's still 2 of them that are 90 or below, and 2 of them that are close to 100. On this, 3 of the 4 have made it to 120. The bottom 3 are all at 120, and the top one's about 105 and has been for a while. And often the top and bottom don't go over about 105 to 110 with the settings that I have, which are 120 for the tray temperatures. So I'm going to go ahead and take this one out and test it, or start the dry check. With my sister's, it's still not ready for the first part of the dry check, so I'll probably go over there, and I'll link that video here somewhere so you can see what I'm talking about. That one is the beef stroganoff, this one's the dry beans. Anyway, in hers, I'll probably go over and check it for the beginning dry check tonight, but not try to take it out, have no plan on going back for the second dry check today, because that would be like, I don't know, 11 or 12 o'clock. I'm not staying up. So we'll get this one stopped and get the dry check going. I'll use the down arrow and bypass the rest of the time. It had just about 3 hours to go. So it's only, so it's been 26 hours total so far. Okay, we'll open the drain valve. As soon as the pressures are equalized, we'll be able to get them out. Oh, I need the scale. Let's get these open. And starting with tray 1. Okay, so that beginning weight now is 986. Do a quick look at those. So these are not what I was hoping for, and I don't know how much of that is just because of how dry beans work, and how much of it is because I cooked them poorly. I probably overcooked them. So I'm concerned that the skins are all shattering and breaking off. So when I go to rehydrate them, they may fall apart. Beans are not one of my foods that I'm good at because I just don't do dry beans enough. Anyway, we'll get this back. Tray 2, 968, but it was going down, so 968, and I'm going to put a little minus sign to remind myself it was right on the verge of going down to the next number. Oh, and I'm going to switch these positions. I'm going to go ahead and put tray 1 down a spot where it is warmer. And tray 2 up a spot. Now tray 3. 975. I would never trust myself to decide if something is dry by touching it. I'm going to kind of break this one. Yeah, it just turns to powder inside, so I don't know what's going to happen for rehydrating these. And tray 4 and 978. And tray 4 will come up a spot.
Taxi!
And tray 3 will come down a spot. And for this purpose, this disc is meaningless, but if it sets overnight, that will be important. I've already closed the drain valve. We're going to get it restarted. We'll give it 2 or 3 more hours and then recheck it to find out if it lost any weight. If it doesn't lose any weight, then it's dry now. You saw how it kind of breaks apart in powders. I'm not real confident that it's going to rehydrate into a nice structural bean. Worst case is refried beans out of this. It'll still work out well for that, but it may not work for whole beans after this process. We'll find out. Going to add more dry time. I did close the drain valve, continue. And on my older model, it has a cooling pump function for an hour. I can bypass that. And I'm going to go ahead and give it 3 hours. And if I make it back in 2, I can just bypass the rest of that. So we'll be right back and check on it in 2 or 3 hours. It's about 3 hours later, and I'm back to check to see if they were dry about 3 hours ago, because that's how the dry check works. I'm not trying to find out if it's dry right now. I'm trying to find out if it was dry 3 hours ago, and this is the test to check it. It just happens to take 3 hours to do this test, or 2 hours. I mean, depending on what food it is, you can go different amounts of times. If it's a food that I know tends to be resistant on giving up its moisture, like blueberries, I'll give it more time, 3 or 4 hours. If it's a small amount of something that's kind of dry to begin with, like already dry hash browns, then maybe I'd give it an hour and a half or 2 hours. Well, 2 hours is kind of my minimum because it's easy to remember. Okay, so we'll bypass the last few minutes of this. And on my machine, with the older machine, the last 15 minutes of the process, the heaters are off and it's starting to cool down. So the heaters have been off for almost 10 minutes, so it's going to start to cool down. The minimum tray temperature right now is the top one at 110. The others are at about 120. We'll open the drain valve. Seems dark here for some reason. Got that light on, got that on, no idea. And with the pressure equalized, we can get it open. And tray 2 is, or the second place down is tray 1, starting with tray 1. And it's still nice and toasty. And tray 1. 985, tray 2, 967, tray 3, 975, and tray 4, 978. Let me think about this for a minute. Let's double check tray 1, re-zeroing the scale, make sure this fan is off. Tray 1, 985. I'm going to recheck tray 2. All right, I'm going to take them out. I'm taking them out. 2 trays after 3 hours, 2 trays each had 1 gram of loss. I'm asked occasionally, how much is too much? And my answer is, I don't feel comfortable with anything more than 0. But I do occasionally take them out with extremely small amounts of loss. On this case, the weight of the food on the trays, now that it's dry, is about 200 grams. And during 3 hours, it had less than 1 gram of loss. So that would be less than 1/2 of 1%. And I know from our previous experiments and tests and tracking this, that if I do it another 3 hours or 2 hours or 3 hours, I'm unlikely to have any loss on the next time around. So though I'm uncomfortable with anything more than 0, I do occasionally take them out with a single gram, as long as it's been at least 2.5 to 3 hours of dry check, and there's more than 100 grams of dry food on it, so therefore less than 1%, even if it was in there. And it's a food that I'm comfortable releases the water easily. Again, blueberries would be an example of, I wouldn't chance blueberries or green beans because of the seed inside the green bean. If that hasn't cooked like these dry beans have, if those haven't been cooked like the dry beans have, where the seed actually pops open, that shell of the bean helps kind of keep the moisture in. So there are things that I have taken out with as high as 1 gram after 3 hours, as long as it meets all these other parameters. But I'm never comfortable doing that. If I want to add any more time on these, that will mean taking them out tomorrow, which I can do. The beef stroganoff that's in my sister's machine, I haven't done the first dry check for yet. And so those will go overnight because I simply won't have time to take care of them today. So I defrost mine using a fan. You can use the defrost function. I just don't do that. I use a fan, and the fan would be running for at least 2 days unless I get another batch in there right away. And I am hoping to get a batch in there tomorrow. And I never have the door closed unless I'm running a batch. The time on that is 29 hours, 4 minutes. I'll put 29 hours. And the power usage on that was 17.98 kilowatt hours. So I'll reset that for the next one. All right, ready for the next batch. Now go to the bagging area. And we'll get the thermometers out and get the final gross weights, and then we can calculate the net weight. So 977, 976, 976. $9.59, $9.66, $9.70. So here's the data I've got. Before I started, this had about 6¼ pounds, or 38 grams, and it ends up at 880 grams, which is close to 2 pounds. I think looking at them and the fact that there's 4 trays filled with this amount, I think I'm not going to be able to put a whole pound in a bag, because that would be more than half a tray into a bag, and I want to use the quart bags. So I'm going to go with 3/4 pound, and that would be a nice amount for using when I go to use them too. But first, we'll do a test and find out if that fits. We need 105.4 grams in there to equal a pound. So we'll do a test on it. We're zeroing the scale out with the bag on it. So need about a half of this tray. Well, it's pretty close. 105. Oh, slightly too much. So I could use a slightly smaller bag. I'm going to go ahead and use this size bag on them. And I'm really concerned that these are not going to hold up well until they get rehydrated, but we'll be doing a test on that tomorrow. So I'm going to pour this back out, and because it's easier to put the labels on while the bag is flat. 105.4 on the average. So that's what I'm putting in each bag, approximately, and we'll be keeping the last one out for testing tomorrow. And you can definitely tell that some of the beans are completely blown apart and damaged. They still work great for refried beans. I'm just not sure exactly if this is because I overcooked them or if it's just part of that process. But some of them came out very well, so I'm going to guess I overcooked a bunch of them. So I need to learn how to cook beans, or I need to buy canned beans. There should be a 1/4 pound extra here. I'm going to just save out this last bit for testing, and if it's not a conclusive test, then I'll go get another bag. But I just want to see how they do. I'm going to use a Mylar bag still for my test bit, because the only small zipper bags I have are the thin ones, and those won't do for even overnight. And we'll look at this a little bit more tomorrow. Now on this one, I'm going to not use an oxygen absorber because I'm not worried about it oxidizing in just a day. But I will go ahead and heat seal that. Heat sealed, we'll do something with that tomorrow. So as usual, I'm using the 300cc oxygen absorbers, and this is a partial bag. It has 8, which works out perfectly because I need 8 for this batch. On these, I can just drop them down in there because they're not as full, except I still need to remember to move each one of them over. Now I'm checking them, make sure I didn't miss one, because my normal practice is to tuck it down the side and move it over as I go so I don't lose my place. Okay, there's one in each one. Now, I'm not going to try to push out any extra air because these beans are going to be very fragile. In fact, if I had the nitrogen system, I would blow this up like a balloon. So I'm going to just zipper it and not try to push out any extra air. It's still going to shrink down by about 21% as the oxygen is absorbed, so it still might crush some of them. And we'll be testing that test bag tomorrow and see how they do. Now heat sealer time. I'm going to seal these very high up on the bag. And with my machine, I'm going to do this first one twice. to make sure it comes up to temperature, because mine doesn't have a silicone insulation piece under the element. It just has more of the metal case, so it can absorb a lot of heat. Okay, and then double checking to make sure that it doesn't just look sealed, but it's actually sealed. Important step. Okay, and I don't check every single bag, but I do check them frequently, and usually at least one on each batch, just to make sure that it's still functioning properly. Sealing it as high up on the bag as I can. That way, if I do a bad job on sealing, I've got room for 2 or 3 more tries. Or if I want to cut the top off, use some of it and reseal it. I've got plenty of room to do that above the zipper. And you can just keep sealing and cut off the zipper and even go below it. That one's kind of an angle. It doesn't have the full seal, so I'll do that again. And then I'm waiting a few seconds for it to cool before I release it. As usual, I'm going to add one more piece of information to these bags. I'm going to add the gross weight of the bag now. 131 grams. And that way, if it has a problem in the future, I've done a bad seal, the bag gets punctured, it's a bad quality bag, anything that allows water to get through there and start making it heavier, I'll be able to tell just putting it back on the scale and weighing it. So I've got my batch number up here in felt pen in case my label fails. Then I can refer back to my notes and find out all the information about this batch. And on the label I have the batch number, the date it went into the freeze dryer, what it is, the weight before drying, 3/4 pound, and the amount of water it needs to get back to the 3/4 pound, and then what to do with the stuff. The more detail, I'd like to add even more detailed information, and as I go I'll probably do more of that. As soon as these all have the weight on them, they'll be ready for long-term storage. So ideally, all of the bags will, if you're portioning them out like this, and that's not required, but if you're portioning them out like this, trying to get the same amount in each bag, one of the things that this final weight gives you is a check to make sure you didn't mess something up. If a bag is significantly lighter, you might have forgot the oxygen absorber, or something else might have gone wrong, and you've got a chance to double check it now. Now, these are ready for the bins. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one, which is the beef stroganoff sauce. So be on that one soon. A bit of the testing of that batch of beans. It's not the next day. I thought it would be the next day. So these came out the 27th, 28th, and so it was supposed to be the next day. Well, now it's November 3rd. So it took a little while to get to this. Okay, and on this bag, if you remember, it was only going to be a day, so I didn't bother with an oxygen absorber, and I still wouldn't bother with it if I'm just doing this sample just a day or two. So I'm going to get a few of these out. Oh, I want to help keep this warm, I'm going to preheat the bowl. So let me pour those back in there. And I'll insulate this from the cutting board. Pre-warm this. Okay, now the bowl is quite warm. That'll help keep it warm when I add the water to the beans. And I don't know how long this would take to rehydrate. I'm hoping just a couple of minutes. So pour that out, add a few of the beans. I'm going to just do a few of them. We'll add this, and I'm not going to worry about the amount of water, just that there's plenty of water in them. And then they can just absorb what they need. Let's get 2 of them because I want to show this one. So obviously, well, at least I think it's obvious, that I must have overcooked this a lot, and they started to just break apart and fall apart. This one still looks like a nice shaped bean. The skin is completely shattered though. And if we Gosh, you probably want to be as close as possible for that. So I'm going to just crush it. You can see it just turns to powder.
Yeehaw!
Okay. Yeah, so just a powder. Now this has only been a very short time, and I don't know how much time it would take for the water to get to the middle of these. But this one's completely broken apart, so let's try that. And obviously that's going to be mushy because it's broken apart. Well, it's rehydrated through and through. Yeah, it's pretty good. That one was rehydrated through and through. So the ones that are broken open rehydrate in seconds. And we'll take this one also that's broken apart. Again, nice creamy bean. So if nothing else, refried beans would be really easy to make out of this. Gonna try to break one of these, or yeah, I'll just go ahead and break it. Okay, that's still dry in the center. So when they're whole, they're going to take a little while longer, but you know, it's only been a minute or so. At this point, I'm thinking the biggest problem I have is I probably cooked them way too much, did not do a good job. And I'd mentioned that to my sister and said I should have tried some canned beans. So she bought me a selection of canned beans. So this batch with all these varieties are going to be going in there soon, and we'll do a whole set of canned beans and see how those work out, because these will be cooked to probably perfection. They'll also have calcium chloride in there, which helps keep beans more firm. Which of course I don't have that in mine. So the ones that are broken open rehydrate in seconds. The other ones are going to take a bit longer. So I did a poor job on cooking. We'll try another batch. I'll look up how you're supposed to cook beans and keep them firm. I mean, they taste perfectly good. Close this up. Be good for another test another day. So we're just going to cover that. We'll come back and look at that in a few minutes. I gave it about, I don't know, 5-8 minutes, something like that. Not a long time, quite a short time. So let's take one of the whole ones, because we already know that the broken open ones will be rehydrated through and through, because that happens extremely quickly. So, okay. This is almost to the center. You can see the little teeny dry spot left, and that's all. And not too bad. Cooking the beans and then freeze drying them and then being able to use them very, very rapidly definitely works. However, I kind of sucked at it. So we're going to learn how to cook beans better. And in the meantime, we'll do a test using canned ones, which I think they all have calcium chloride. Yeah, it looks like they all have calcium chloride to help keep them firm. So I'm going to assume that I can, well, I could either add calcium chloride to mine, but I really don't want to. I just want beans. So I just need to learn to cook them better. I overcooked them and kind of paying the price on that now. They're rehydrating fine, and the structure is coming back pretty nice. And if it's like a lot of the things, if you give it an extra 20 minutes or something, the structure will be even better. But they're no longer powdery and mushy, so it definitely works. We will do some more of this. I've got a big bag of beans to try, of pinto beans, and I'd love to be able to use them quickly like that. Definitely works. Now we got to figure out how to cook them properly so that it works for whole beans. Okay, stay tuned for canned ones and better cooked ones.